going to see if I can survive the challenge of technology once again. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. I always enjoy coming into this room because it has a good feeling. And it's really, it's got a good feeling, I think, because of the energy and of goodness that everybody brings here. And so I appreciate you coming and bringing your good energy to this space today, so thank you. So I like it, yes. Winnie is reminding me. I tell you what, it takes a village to raise a Lama. It takes a village to raise a Lama. And many times I begin my talk without doing the opening. I just forget. I get excited and, I'm like a 2-year-old sometimes. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin with a good intention. And there's a saying in Tibetan Buddhism, good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Sometimes they say excellent at the beginning, excellent in the middle, and excellent at the end. And what it refers to is our motivation and our application of our practice. So the motivation for practice is to benefit others. That's excellent at the beginning. Excellent in the middle is to be attentive to the teaching or the practice or whatever it is we're putting our mind to. And excellent at the end means we dedicate and share the goodness with everybody. So this will be excellent at the beginning. What we'll do is, this is a prayer asking for the presence of the Buddha, his teaching, and all the Bodhisattvas to be present here with us during our get together. And we'll recite it 2 times in English, and then I'll chant it 1 time in Tibetan, and you can join in if you'd like to. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment, by the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. O Sanjay Chudan Sochi Chonamla Changchu Pardu Dhani Kyapsuchi Daji Jinso Jibe Sunaham Ki Trola Penshir Sanjay Druparsho. Okay, thanks very much. And I'll begin by reciting. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Reciting a short prayer to the gurus of the lineage. Oh, Palden Sawai Lama Rinpoche, Tagi Chior Pede Den Shola, Kadrin Jembo Gane Je Sunte, Kusum Tugging a Drip Sal to Soul. Okay, thanks very much. I had a fun experience this morning when I got ready to leave for today and was grabbing the books and so forth that I would need to be here. And I realized that I had prepared the wrong talk for today. I had advertised a talk on the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, but I was preparing the talk for the 30th on lamas and empowerments. It happens. So I was hoping to have small copies of the 37 practices to give you today so that we could all recite them together. But it didn't work out. Instead, I'll talk a little bit about the topic. In fact, I will be able to give the talk. So that part's okay. I'm prepared. I actually have that talk ready. It's just that I didn't have the handouts ready. I don't like being unprepared, but it happens from time to time. So the reason I wanted to talk about this particular subject is because the last few talks I've been talking about what is beyond mindfulness. Mindfulness is great, but what do we do to go beyond mindfulness? What's beyond that? And if you remember from some of the talks, what is beyond mindfulness is the development of love and compassion. Love and compassion for ourselves, because we frequently leave ourselves out of our love and compassion. Developing love and compassion for ourselves, developing love and compassion for others. And by so doing, we create an environment around ourselves that is more mindful, more kind, and more loving. And that this actually takes training. And that was what we talked about last week, was why does it take effort to train in something that's supposed to come naturally, which is love? Why does it take training? And the answer to this, of course, is because we love some people, but there are many other people we don't love. There are some people who are outside the fence of our love and compassion. We place them out there. We judge them. We say they're not good people and they're not deserving of our love and not deserving of our compassion. Now, this may make us feel a little distress because we like to think of ourselves as good people. We like to think of ourselves as being kind and loving. But if we look at our mind from day to day, we may find ourselves not being so kind to ourselves sometimes. Sometimes people tell me they have self-talk, things they say to themselves over and over again that are not healthy. It's almost like some people take on the negative voices of others from their past who judge them harshly to their face, and they take on those voices and then they start to use those voices against themselves. And so part of the reason we need to train in love is to retrain our thinking so that negative judgmental voice we hear in our own heads sometimes can be changed. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight, because we do judge ourselves a lot, and I understand. It's important to do our best in every way we can, with ourselves, with our families, with our work, with the world. But we can be too harsh in our judgment. And by being too harsh in our judgment, we don't give ourselves a chance to change. We don't give ourselves a chance to improve. And so when you see Buddhist literature about the training in love and compassion, frequently it will be written in verse so that it's easy to memorize. And part of the reason for this is because in old Tibet, books were not that common. Every family had a few, but not that many. And they were often in bad shape and could barely be read. So memorization was very important for training in these ideas of love and training in the ideas of compassion. A few minutes ago, I did a reading transmission for someone on the 59 mind training slogans of Chikawa Yeshe Dorje as a prelude to studying them deeply. I will not be able to give you the reading transmission for the 37 practices today, but Lama Karma Drodhul, who is going to be teaching in 2 weeks on Zoom for us, he's going to give the reading transmission on Zoom, because apparently technology is a friend of Dharma. And our teachers, who usually insist on person-to-person transmission, presence and transmission for important teachings and words and so on, have said that Zoom works just fine. Because there is a sense of presence, isn't there? How did we do that? By the way, this is off topic, but during the pandemic, we had to use Zoom a lot. And after a while, it got to feel like you actually were. Was this weird? Or was this just me? That, you actually felt like you were in the room with somebody? It's very weird. But anyhow, so this must be the human capacity for presence. Because humans do have a capacity to be present with each other, with their children, with their parents, with their pets. People have a capacity to be present. And so I found that very interesting. So Lama Karma on Saturday, the 22nd of this month, 2 weeks from yesterday, will be giving 4 hours of teaching on the 37 practices. And I'd like to encourage everyone to sign up and register for this class because it's going to be quite good. And I decided probably 2 days ago that it would be fun if we had a watch party here. So we're going to do a watch party here, and you can bring your sack lunch, and we'll hang out in the shrine room with a big TV. And if we can't get the big TV to work in the shrine room, we'll be down in the community room, closer to the coffee, and having our watch party there. As part of the watch party, I will be giving those small copies of the 37 practices. I'll give them away to anybody who comes to the watch party. And then we'll just kind of hang out and talk about the 37 actions of a Bodhisattva. The first talk starts at 10, and the last talk ends at 4. So it's a day, and if you can't be here for the whole day, just come for the morning, or just come for the afternoon, or just come for lunch in the free booklet. Hey, but you have to bring your own lunch. Anyway, going back to the 37 practices and why it's so special, in the description for this class, I mentioned the story about in 12th century Tibet, there was a little shepherd boy who was worried about the ants in an anthill freezing to death. And so he took off his outer chuba, which basically was his clothing, and put it on the anthill to keep it warm. And his mother saw him running around with hardly anything on, if anything, and said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I didn't want them to die. The ants in the anthill, I didn't want them to die." And I mean, isn't that like kids speak? I mean, that's the compassion of children, isn't it, right? They worry about these critters. Critters are important in a kid's world. And in case, this was the beginning of life of the great Tibetan saint Ngulchu Thogme. Now, you don't have to remember his name because it'll be on the booklets. But Thogme Rinpoche, as we would call him, Rinpoche means precious teacher. Thogme Rinpoche became really an incredibly powerful practitioner of love and compassion. And he's one of these beings who, my own teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, said, if you practice love and compassion, you can become a Buddha without doing anything else except love and compassion. He said, tell everybody that they can become a Buddha just by practicing love and compassion. And I used to scratch my head about that and say, well, wait a minute, how's that possible? How can a person become a Buddha through love? And then I thought back to the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. Suffering's part of life, the Buddha said. Suffering has a cause. Suffering has a solution. And there's a path that leads to the end of suffering. The part where he talks about the causes of suffering, that suffering's part of life, we kind of get that. We feel it. We got physical suffering. We got emotional suffering. We got spiritual suffering. We got all kinds. So we're familiar with that. But what we're not as familiar with is the cause. Sometimes we think the cause of suffering is external. It's the system. It's other people. It's the boss. It's whoever. But really, the Buddha said the cause of suffering is our fixation and clinging and our insistence on things being the way we want them to be. And it's almost like we do a violence to ourself and a violence to our world by insisting that everything be our way. My way or the highway. But so it's that grasping that causes our suffering, and you can feel it. The Buddhist teacher, the nun, Pema Chodron, she said, if something hurts so much, it's because I'm holding on so tight. And so if you think about that, that makes sense. And what's the thing we grab onto more tightly than anything? Our sense of me or I. I had a friend, I had a Dharma friend who went to prison. Yeah, it happens. And she wrote to me from prison. It happens. Anyway. So, and she wrote to me from prison, and she said, ever since I've been in prison, she said, I've learned a lot about myself. And she said, and I've gone into 12-step recovery because I forged those prescriptions because I was addicted to drugs. And because I was addicted to drugs, I acted stupid and I broke the law, and now I'm in prison. She said, but going through 12-step recovery has helped me understand my part in it. And she said, and you know what I found out? I found out that deep inside me, I am harboring a secret inside me, and that is that secretly I feel superior to everyone. I feel that I am superior to everyone. I have a secret sense of self-superiority. And she said, and that's what led me into addiction, because I couldn't get everything my way, and so forth and so on. And it led me into hurting myself and hurting my family. It led me into a lot of really bad stuff, and now I'm in prison. And so I wrote back to her and I said, this secret that you have discovered is incredibly valuable, but you are not alone. You are not alone. Many of us harbor a secret sense of self-superiority. It's what makes us grab the largest piece of fruit on a pile. It's what makes us cut in front of somebody in traffic. It's right? It's what makes us trash talk people in our heads, because we put ourselves in that position, being the judge. So this is painful to come to a realization that we're all like this. But the truth is that knowing that we are like this is actually a good thing. Because once we realize this is what we've got, then we can begin to work with it and notice it and begin to change it just a little bit each time. And that's what we've been talking about in the previous classes on extending mindfulness into everyday situations. Watch what's on your mind and act accordingly, and use antidotes to negative mental afflictions while they are happening. And so, people go to prison. Yes, they do. And so this woman really helped me a lot. This person we might judge. She helped me a lot because she, in that letter, helped me to see my own secret sense of self-superiority. And I watch for it in ways I never did before I got that letter from her. Because before, you let it go. That's just me being me. Or I have a right to ask for that, or I deserve that, or whatever. Yes, some of that is true. Some things we do deserve. But, some things it's a little different. So, going back to the Four Noble Truths, this secret sense of self-superiority has to have a cure. There's got to be a way to fix it, right? Oh wait, there is a way to fix it, love. Because if we love other people and we love ourselves, we will have the right sense of who we are. Not the wrong one, but the right one of who we think we are. And we'll begin to see that other people are suffering from the same mistakes that we are suffering from. And we'll have a little bit of pity and compassion for them. Because they were, as my friends in 12-step like to say, there but for the grace of Buddha go I, right? So as a result, we learn to let go of this secret sense of self-superiority by practicing love. And remember, we talked last week about how to sit on your meditation cushion and imagine that you extend love mentally to all beings everywhere as an exercise in training your heart in love and training your heart and mind in a loving attitude. And that training then you can carry into your everyday life. But you may need a guidebook for how to practice love. Because, I didn't come with an instruction manual on how to practice love. I wasn't born with one. And so that's why people like Thogme Rinpoche wrote books like the 37 Practices. So that by reading these books and possibly remembering some of the verses, we might have a framework for remembering the love that is going to begin to wash away suffering and its causes. Because the cause of suffering is clinging. And if we can begin to let go of that selfishness, that, the secret sense of self-superiority, if we can begin to let go of the unhealthy selfishness and begin to embrace love for ourselves and others, we can make some progress. That's the bottom line. And everybody asks me when I talk about the book 37 Actions, or 37 Practice, why 37? I have a good answer for you. Got no clue. No clue. Actually, I do have a clue. The Buddha, during his 45 years of teaching, he lived 2,500 years ago in India. During his 45 years of teaching, he gave innumerable teachings, innumerable. If you say to somebody, where's the Buddhist Bible? It's about 200 volumes. It's big. It's big. So not one person can memorize it all or know it all. But what we can do is study the parts that are relevant to us and that help us the most. And I love it that my teacher, as I mentioned previously, my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, used to quote 12-step, and he didn't know he was doing it when he said, take what you need and leave the rest. Take the parts of Dharma that are useful to you and don't worry about the other parts. Just take what works for you on your being, what works for you and changes you from inside. Just work with that. And so the Buddha also taught that there were 37 factors that lead to enlightenment. 37 factors that lead to enlightenment. These are 37 topics that one can study one after another, or they could be studied and practiced in any order, really. And these 37 factors of enlightenment were memorized by his followers. And that became part of their training. Well, we don't do that so much these days. These days we give talks, we give Dharma talks, we do meditation lessons, and we don't rely as much on the memorization of things. But the number 37 keeps popping up in other areas because I think as a form of, we'll call it numeric feng shui. It's like numeric feng shui. If there are 37 factors of enlightenment, why not write a book called The 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva? I mean, it's like a lucky number, if you want to put it that way. But the lucky part is actually for us because 37 isn't so hard to learn. That's a joke. Of course it's hard to learn because we're not used to it. You know, we don't necessarily do this sort of thing. But somebody, I'll give you an example of Ngulchu Thogme Rinpoche's writing. Somebody give me a number between 1 and 37. 31. Okay, thanks. Here we go. Not examining our own confusion, we could masquerade as a practitioner while not being in harmony with the Dharma. Therefore, to continually examine our confusion and discard it is the practice of a bodhisattva. Okay? Give me another number over here. 12. Okay. Oh, yeah. And by the way, it's like a fortune cookie. I use this, sometimes I use this like a fortune cookie. I just, I'll just, close my eyes and pick something, and it's usually something I need to hear. So if you needed to hear that, whoever asked for that number, that's great. Now, whoever asked for number 12, listen closely. If out of great desire, someone steals all of our wealth, or makes another do so, to dedicate our body, possessions, and all the merit of the 3 times to this person is the practice of a bodhisattva. Ouch. All of our merit? No joke, really? Of course, this is somewhat comical because we had our prayer flags stolen this week. The rigging and everything. We have it on video, actually. Not the actual theft and not the actual face of the thief, but we do have him on video. At 4:15 in the morning on Thursday, he rode his mountain bike north on this Pennington Alley, and then stopped right in front of the flags, and he unhooked them, and he somehow pulled the rigging off of the poles and the flags, and stuffed them all in the backpack, got on his bike, and made a right on Rich Street, where he was caught by the other camera. I mean, hey, he obviously needed the rigging and the metal that goes with it, and the flags worse than we needed. But, there's a moment where we think, person must be pretty desperate to be stealing rope and to be stealing pieces of metal rigging, It's a kind of a sad situation. But the idea is, you may see that the language looks a little extreme in here. If somebody steals all of our wealth, it's asking us to think about the very worst thing that could possibly happen. You don't want to hear 13, let me just tell you. But, okay, I'll read it. But it makes you imagine like the worst. And it says, even in that situation, you can practice as a bodhisattva would practice. And many people say, why are they using such extreme examples? And I don't really know 100%, but here's what I think. I think it's because we all go through difficulty every single day. Not as bad as somebody stealing all of our wealth. They just stole our prayer flags. So if a real bodhisattva can be patient with someone who steals all their wealth, we can at least be a little patient and a little compassionate with somebody who takes some of our stuff. And I think that's what they're trying to point at here, that we all become bodhisattvas by degrees. We all become bodhisattvas one moment at a time, one situation at a time, one situation at a time. Just, we take it one by one by one by one. And we use these situations of our lives to train our minds. Sometimes it works and we feel okay with what's going on. Sometimes it does not work. And then we really get angry or really upset. But even then, there's something we can do, because my teacher said, he must have known me. He must have known I was raised Catholic or something, Because he said, when your mind feels unsteady, he said, like that would happen? Oh, how did he know that? How did he know my mind would be unsteady? Anyhow, he said, think of the Buddha and pray to the Buddha. Because if we think about the images of the Buddha we see, he's pretty stable, like a mountain. And so that's what he wanted me to do. So even if there's nothing else to do but think of the Buddha and pray to the Buddha, a person can do that. So it's like that. Okay, 13. I'm sorry, here it comes. I don't think I want to read this. Anybody else know what's in 13? Okay, just checking. Okay. Spoiler alert. Even if another were to cut off your head, though we had not done the slightest thing wrong, to take on all their negativity with compassion is the practice of a bodhisattva. Well, that's not happening. That is not happening. And people do. They ask about why is it so extreme? And I think part of the reason that this extremity is used is to wake us up, kind of snap us out. It's not just sweet little things being said to us. It's like, this is big, hairy deal. This is a big thing. We're talking about the experiences of our life. Not that this is going to happen, but you get the idea. The idea is if a bodhisattva can be compassionate to the person who is killing them, we can at least be compassionate to the person who cuts in front of us in traffic. I'm just saying. So reading this is a practice. Reading these 37 practices, it's a practice. There's a Lama who visited Columbus in the 1980s, Khenpo Tsultrim Gyamtso. I don't think anybody was here who saw him. I don't think anybody is here from that era except me. And he was asked, not during this particular visit, but he was rather hard-nosed. And somebody said, hey, can I take refuge in Buddhism with you, Khenpo Tsultrim? And he said, you might want to think about it, because I'm going to make you read the life of Milarepa like 3 times. And then I'm going to have you do a lot of other stuff you might not want to do. And so the person thought better of it and didn't do it. But somebody went to him once and said, oh, Tsultrim Rinpoche, please teach me about compassion. And he said, great. Here's the 37 actions of a bodhisattva. Read it 1,000 times. Read it 1,000 times out loud, and then come back and see me, and we'll talk. So it's not that he was being hard-nosed and mean to this person. He did this for everybody. Every one of his students had to read the 37 practices out loud 1,000 times. As part of their training. Because after 1,000 times, you pretty much know what's in it. You pretty much know what's in it, and it comes to mind when you need it. I mean, it's like, how did I know what 13 was? I've only read it 300 times, and not out loud either. I mean, you're sitting on an airplane. Are you going to read something out loud on an airplane? No. They carry you away, you know. Especially the one I just read. Okay. Anyway, so this is why Lama Karma, his teaching on it, is going to be so important, because these are pithy little teachings in 4 lines of poetry. There's 37 of them, of these pithy little teachings, and there's a verse for each of the 6 perfections, and there's a verse for aspiration bodhicitta and action bodhicitta. There's a verse for virtually any topic you might want to have discussed. And so this will be a lot of fun, and I invite all of you to make sure you make some time on Saturday the 22nd, either to watch from home in your fuzzy slippers, or bring your fuzzy slippers down here and bring your sack lunch and be with us on the 22nd while we go through this together. Now, my idea, of course, was to have copies of the 37 actions to give you today so we could all read it together one time, but it didn't work out that way. So I think what I'll do is I'll take some questions, and then if there's some time at the end, I'll read parts of it to you. How about that? The only other thing I could think of was to get people to line up at the microphone and hold the books and everybody read one, 2, 3, 4, but that would be a little cumbersome. So yes, question, yeah. And we have 2 microphones, and thank you, Caleb, man of the hour here on the sound desk. Hello.
I don't know what this means, but 37 is a prime number.
Hey, cool.
Can't be reached. Also 3, 5, 7, 13, 17, 19, 23, can't read it, 29, 31, and 30, no, not. Those are prime numbers.
Prime numbers, that's pretty cool, actually. I mean, any other math nuts here? I married a math nut, and it is so much fun to live with a math nut, I just have to say. Yeah, thank you.
The important question for me is since the guy or girl who stole the prayer flags did so, then ideally the Bodhisattva would give him all our prayer flags, not prosecute, invite in.
Right.
So, will we do that?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what the wise action is in this particular case, because we did make a police report so that the local police would be aware that someone is taking things. But we recognize that the likelihood of the person being found is very, very small. So I do not know what the decision will be, and if the decision to prosecute this person would happen or not, I can't tell you. I do know that the person who set the fire that burned our previous building down, that was also reported to the police, and the person was captured. And hopefully they got some counseling for their fire-setting behavior. So it's not for me to say what is in the best karmic interest of every individual, because I don't know. But I have to, it'll be something to think deeply about. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Reading all the rules here.
Yeah, oh, yes, I know. Isn't that nice? He put some instructions on there. That was from Don, our...
3 finger widths between me and... Okay. You said that in 2 weeks when Lama Karma will be given that teaching, that the doing it by Zoom will be qualified as receiving the transmission. I'm curious if watching the recording of that would also qualify.
They say not, because it's not live anymore.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It's not live anymore. I know, it's a technicality. We have to really think about that. The other thing is, if you come on the 22nd and he doesn't give it, I'll give it, because there's going to be like a 2-hour break for lunch. So there'll be a break between 12 noon and 2 o'clock when the afternoon session starts, and so I can give it if he doesn't. So we'll get it handled, you know. Yeah, thanks for that, yeah. Other things that people might want to ask about. Yeah.
I don't know if I just understood what you said. Is Lama Karma going to be live?
The answer is Yes and no, because he will be giving the teaching live, but not here in person.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
I have questions. I've already asked this. It's like the same question.
Okay.
I think you probably know what question it is, but I asked Lama Tashi, and I wasn't satisfied with the answer. Now I want to ask Lama Karma.
Yeah, you might need to get closer to the microphone. Yeah, get closer to the microphone.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to ask the question here.
Oh, you don't? Okay, I apologize. Okay, I misunderstood. Thank you very much.
It's one of those, if he who knows doesn't speak and he who speaks doesn't know type things.
Okay, all right, yeah, gotcha. Boy, I tell you what, that's deep, you know. Yeah, I like that. He who speaks doesn't know, and he who knows doesn't speak. I get you. You know, it's so funny. The Buddha, here's the funny thing. The Buddha, after the Buddha reached his enlightenment, he sat for days not knowing whether to speak or not. Because he said, how is anybody ever going to understand what I have understood? But yet I feel compelled to tell people about this. And lucky for him, a couple of the gods decided that it was going to be their job to ask him. At least that's how the legend goes. And so Brahma and Indra asked him to teach, and so he taught and answered to their request. So, and that's why one of the 7, talk about numbers, we're into numbers here. There's 37 of this and 7 of this and 7 of that. That's one of the 7, why one of the 7 branches of offering is to ask the Buddhas to teach, turn the wheel of Dharma, because they may not do it without being asked. It's not polite, but there you go. Time for one more, if there's one more out there. If not, we'll sit. Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, I'm open to questions. I just wasn't sure there was any. Yes. You can actually move that up.
Okay.
He's given us the power to move the microphone. I love the little sign. It's very cute, actually. We have little signs on our microphone telling people to edge up to the microphone and to,
Which number is your favorite?
Which number is what?
Your favorite of
My
the 37.
favorite? I'm going to say it might be 20 and it might be 36. So I can read, it might be 20 and it might be 36. But let's see. Although 18 is really good too. Okay, so here's 20. Not conquering the foe of your own anger. Fighting with enemies outside, you'll just make more. Therefore, with an army of love and compassion to tame our mind is the practice of a bodhisattva. I love that. Not conquering the foe of your own anger, the enemy of your own anger. Fighting with outer opponents will only make them multiply. Therefore, with an army of love and compassion to subdue or tame our own mind is the practice of bodhisattva. So that's one of my favorites. And then 36, it's the reason I like 36 is because, in brief, wherever you are and whatever you do, while staying continually mindful and alert to the state of our mind, to benefit others is the practice of a bodhisattva. And number 18, I like number 18 because it's about taking heart. It's about taking heart when things are going wrong. Number 18, though stricken with poverty and always scorned, plagued by grave illness and bad spirits too, not to lose heart, but to take on all the misdeeds and misery of all beings is the practice of a bodhisattva. In other words, he's saying that even though you go through a lot of suffering yourself, not to stew in that suffering, not to stew in it, but to rather take action to help yourself and to help others. That's the practice of Bodhisattva. That just makes, it's kind of like the 10th chapter of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. This is another book I love. This was written in the 8th century by the Indian master Shantideva. He was a monk. This is not Thogme's story, but Shantideva's story. And he was thought to be incredibly lazy. People just looked at him and said, boy, all he does is eat, sleep, and, poop. He doesn't do anything. He's like useless. He's useless. So everybody thought he was useless. So in the monastery at that time, everybody had to take a turn and give a Dharma teaching. So it was his turn. And so the other monks wanted him to be embarrassed, so embarrassed that he would leave the monastery. So they built this really big teaching throne for him to sit on. So he would get maximum embarrassment when he got up there and had nothing to say. Because they thought he was lazy. And so when he gets up there, he climbs up and he says, okay, would you like to hear a teaching from one of the texts that has come before, or do you want me to give you an original composition? And they said, oh, we want the original composition, please, because they thought that he was stupid. And so he actually recites 10 chapters of verses that were his masterwork, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. By the time he got to the 9th chapter, which was the wisdom chapter, he began to kind of levitate off the seats, and the guys looked at each other and said, maybe we made a mistake about this guy. Anyhow, so that's the story. And he gave chapter 10 from someplace up in the sky. Who knows about these legends, but, who knows? But it's a lovely story that talks about underestimating someone. Everybody has a story about being underestimated, and we all feel it sometimes. But Shantideva, he felt that it was important to teach these practices of love and compassion. And in chapter 10, he really tugs at our heartstrings, just like verse number 18 does here. It kind of tugs at our heartstrings by imagining what Buddhahood, the power of Buddhahood. What is the power of Buddhahood? And he imagines the Bodhisattva Manjushri, and he imagines the Bodhisattva Chenrezig appearing in hell. He imagines them appearing in hell in all of their majesty and glory. And then it says, come quickly, friends, and gather here. So all the hell beings are telling each other, come on, come here. Gotta come and see this. And they're all there and they shout with joy. And so what this means is that enlightened beings can bring joy to the darkest corners of our mind. It's symbolic, that beings are in hell, although we know beings who are in hell now because they're walking among us as human beings, right? And we have to find ways to have compassion for them, like the guy who stole our stuff, He's in his own private situation there. But to me, the power of Buddhahood is the power to shed that light on even the darkest corner of our mind. And to remind ourselves that we have Buddha nature and we can wake up. And so in chapter 10, not only do Manjushri and Chenrezig appear in hell and liberate the beings in hell, by the way. They don't just show up for fun. They actually, get them out of hell. But then we make a lot of aspirations. And one of my favorite ones is the one where it says, may all of those who wander in trackless wastelands. Ooh, that's a creepy thought, isn't it? May all of those who wander in trackless wastelands, the children, the aged, those stupefied, and those insane. May they be guarded by beneficent celestials. So the idea then is that even these beings who are in their worst condition, may they be protected and guided by the virtue of a loving heart. Isn't that amazing? That just knocks me out every time I think about that. That's in chapter 10. So if you ever feel discouraged about life, get a copy of The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life and read chapter 10 out loud. If you ever feel discouraged about your life or anybody else's life, read chapter 10 out loud and see what you are capable of. And that will help you. It'll help. I had a guy once, he said, I'm feeling a little depressed, and I'm beginning to doubt that I have Buddha nature. What should I do? And I said, I got no idea, but try reading chapter 2, 3, and 10 of The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life out loud to yourself. And I called him back 2 weeks later, and he said, it's improved. So anyway, we'll stop here for today. Let's sit quietly for about a minute or two, just let everything settle. That's because that was a lot of talking. So just be about 2 minutes of quiet sitting. Okay, thanks very much. Let's do our dedication, shall we? Yeah. Thanks for spending time with us today. It's been really good. And I'm glad we had a chance to talk about the 37 actions, and I hope you'll be able to study more about it as time goes along. We'll be reciting this, I think, just in English today. We gather together all the goodness that we've accumulated by being here today talking about Dharma and about healing our hearts and minds, and dedicate it to all beings. I'll start with the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And drive safely out there. Thanks to all the folks watching at home. And thank you, Mr. Soundman, for being our help today. Thanks very much. Okay, be safe out there, folks.